one of the most iconic machines of the typewriter era is undoubtedly the Olivetti Valentine. The Valentine was designed by Italian designer Ettore Sottsass in conjunction with British man Perry King, and it was launched in the late 1960s to much acclaim. Now, one of the things about the Valentine is that it was designed as a slim, portable machine. It's light, it's largely made of plastic, it slides into a red case, and it has the handle attached. It was a typewriter that was really designed for the typist who was on the go, as it were. It's a beautiful machine. However, it favours form over function, and I think one of the main reasons for this is that in order to enable it to maintain this slimline, lightweight design, it had to forego some of the features that were accepted as standard among other typewriters. So, for instance, the Valentine does not have a tabulator function. You cannot set tabs on it. You can set the margins with the little sliding margin setters on the sliding bar at the rear of the typewriter. However, you cannot assign individual tabs for it, which is something that a lot of other machines have. For instance, my Olympia SM4 has it, and my Adler Special has it. It's not actually the best machine in the world to type on. It doesn't, for instance, have a type. What is it we call it? The adjustable type strength lever on it that you find on many other machines. Again, the SM4 has it, the Adler has it. What it does have is an iconic appearance. The Valentine was produced in 5 colours. Now, because of the association with, Valentine and love and St. Valentine's Day, the red is the one that everybody knows. However, it was also produced in white, in egg yellow, in blue, and in pea green. Now, those other colours are much rarer. The red is the one that's easier to come by in second-hand versions. This one has a serial number of 5115096, which I have looked up on the typewriter database online, and I see it was manufactured in 1969. The red Valentine and the other colours command higher prices online than second-hand typewriters of the same era. And one of the main reasons for this is it is collectible on account of the fact that it made something of a fashion statement at the time. The advertisements of that era for the Valentine were such that they wanted to set it apart from its peers in terms of its appearance more than anything else. Despite the drawbacks, it is still a nice typewriter to use. Now, there is a very special sentimental reason that I like the Valentine, and that is because as a child I actually learned to type on a red Olivetti Valentine, which was owned by my father, who was, and still is, by the way, in his late 70s, a freelance journalist. At that time he was working for the national print media, and this would have been in the early to mid 1980s, at which time, I can't remember the exact year I began typing, but I reckon I was probably around the age of 7 or 8 years old. Little did I know then that I was using a sort of a fashion icon of a typewriter. The newspaper office at that time had various different typewriters, varying sizes, varying ages, different makes and models. The other icon, which I don't possess, which was in the office of in the newsroom of the Drogheda Independent newspaper of the 1980s, was an IBM Selectric. I think it was the Selectric 2. This is a beast of an electronic machine with the golf ball mechanism on it that has this amazing, clunking sound and ability to type really quickly. Anyway, we'll quickly go through some of the features of the Valentine. This one is in a very, very good state of preservation. You can see there on the video there are some scuff marks on the top of the case, and you may not see back here, there are a couple of scratches. By and large, it is in excellent condition. The keys are extremely clean. It looks like a typewriter that didn't have a lot of use during its lifetime. One of the things to look out for when you're buying a second-hand Valentine is that the ribbon spool covers, or these little connectors that keep the spool in place, screw off. Sometimes a second-hand typewriter may be missing one or both of those. They are very important to the function of the typewriter, so it's kind of important that they're in place. Another thing to look out for, hang on while I just grab it here, on the case are these rubber stops that keep the typewriter in place, and sometimes you get those where they're either cracked or broken off and missing, and obviously they keep the typewriter in place when it's in the case, so it's kind of important that they're not just present but also intact. The carriage return lever folds away so that it can be stored in the case. There is a carriage lock mechanism which is on the right hand side. I can't show you that, so I'm going to turn it around. Pardon the mess on the desk. There it is there. There's a carriage lock which prevents the carriage from moving when it's in the case. There is the line selector, which is here, the line select lever, 0, single spacing, 2 and 3, which I think is space and a half, and 2. For today's demonstration, I'm going to leave it on single spacing. There is the carriage release mechanism by which you can slide the carriage back and forth. There is the paper release, which allows you to adjust the paper when you've put it in. There's the paper holder, which is a simple mechanism here. You just press this and it up pops in a V-shaped configuration, the paper support. All of these things should be present and correct and working properly in a good typewriter in a good state of preservation. The color selector down here, you can select black and red, and in the center stencil, which doesn't use the ribbon at all. Now I have an all black ribbon, so it doesn't really matter where, if I select blue or black. If I select red, it uses the bottom part of the ribbon, and if I select stencil, the type slugs miss. The ribbon doesn't come up at all, the type slugs miss the ribbon. It doesn't have a 1, which is a feature of many typewriters of that era. You use a lowercase l for a 1. It does have a 0, which is always a bonus. And as is the case with many of these, the typewriters of that era, it has fractions 1/4, 3/4, 1/3, 2/3, and 1/2. I'm just trying to think what it's missing. It has the @ sign, but it doesn't have a hash. It also has the pound sign for the British market and not the dollar sign. So many American typewriters would have the dollar sign. Another thing to look out for if you're purchasing a second-hand typewriter, if you're a QWERTY keyboard user, remember that there are some slightly different versions. There's a QWERTZ where the Z is here, and there's the AZERTY typewriter with AZERTY, which I believe is used in France. I'm not sure if it's used elsewhere. And of course then there's a Spanish version, and you can get Cyrillic keyboards, etc, etc. Anyway, we'll do a quick type test just to show you how it operates. The paper bail doesn't actually sit on the paper. on the roll. A lot of paper bales sits snugly onto the platen. In this case, this one sits probably a couple of millimeters above the platen. Another thing to examine if you happen to be in the market for a second-hand typewriter is the condition of the platen. This one is okay. Sometimes the platen can get hard and cracked over time and needs to be either replaced or reconditioned. So we'll do a small bit of typing just to put it through its paces and give you an idea of how it types. Another thing about the Valentine is that it doesn't have the exclamation mark. So in order to get an exclamation mark, we use a full stop and a backspace and an apostrophe, which serves the same purpose. It's a little bit slower. Another thing about this particular model, and I have to examine it and see if I can rectify it, is that the bell does not ring very loudly. It's extremely quiet. It doesn't seem to be coated in dust. It may be that it has to be loosened up slightly. It may be that the spring on the lever that hits off it needs to be tightened. I'll have to have a look at that. Another thing about this particular typewriter is that when I got it, the drawband, which connects this spring to the carriage and makes it move to the left, was actually disconnected. Now I'm glad to report that it wasn't in fact broken, because a broken drawband would need to be replaced. The drawband just needed to be reattached, but that's difficult enough. That's a difficult enough task, because the spring needs to be wound around about 5 revolutions in total and held in place, while you then also need to thread the drawband through underneath the carriage. I did this using a long, slender crochet needle. Glad to report that I was able to do that myself, and that I didn't have to send it away to be done by a specialist. I have to check the spelling on Ettore. I'm not sure if that pronunciation is correct. Sottsass, Sottsass, and Britain. I'm reading this from massmadesoul.com. Perry King. Oh dear. Obviously, it's a mechanical typewriter. If you make a mistake, you can either go back and replace the letter or X out your word and carry on, or you can use Tipp-Ex. I'm here using a sort of a light bluish paper, so the Tipp-Ex will appear as white. If you're using white paper, you can use Tipp-Ex, or what you might call white out. We have available here in Ireland Fix-It Fluid, which is a pen that you can use. But look, by the time you correct it and, let it dry and then type over it again, sometimes it's just as messy, Oh, that's because my camera wire is getting in the way and the carriage did not advance, and I typed 2 characters in one space, so I'll X that out. Oh, that was messy. Oh. Oh, I really made a mess of that. Oh. One of the things that I've noticed is, that, and I think I mentioned this before, is that I don't have fine motor skill. I don't have good fine motor skills, and well, one of the upshots of that is that I mistype sometimes, and I'm a little bit awkward. I tend to find that I'm making slightly more mistakes with the Valentine than I do with, especially with the Adler. The Adler has this big, well, you've seen it, I hope in the other video on my YouTube channel. The Adler has sort of a much heavier feel to it, and you have to type with more purpose, and I think this is conducive to taking a little bit more care. The fact that there's a lighter, slightly daintier touch to the Valentine means that, for me anyway, it's just slightly easier to make mistakes. So it's perhaps not the cleanest typescript that you'll see from a typewriter. In my case, it may suit your what's the word, your method, not method, can't think of the word. It may suit your particular style of typing a little bit better. And this is a new ribbon as well, so it is slightly inky. It's leaving a slightly inky type, which I hope you can't really see there, but I hope that you can see it as I skip along here. So at one point, my father's typewriter disappeared. It was given on loan to somebody and never returned. Anyway, this is something that Dad had commented on and off over the years. So last year, in 2021, I bought one online, and I brought him over here and said, look, I have a surprise birthday present for you. And I presented him with another red Olivetti Valentine, and he was absolutely chuffed, really thrilled to have a Valentine back in his possession. Now these days he uses a computer to compose his written work for the newspapers, but like myself enjoys using the typewriter, nonetheless. I still use mine for some of my written work and for my books. I find it's easier to sit for longer spells at a typewriter. Anyway, recently I saw another one, this one, come up for sale on one of the adverts sites here in Ireland, and the seller was looking for €350. Now these Valentines do not sell, by and large, they don't sell for the sort of prices that other typewriters of the same age sell for. I've seen them commanding prices of €500 and €600. I'm sure that the rarer colours, for instance, I don't think I've ever seen a pea green Valentine for sale. I've seen a white one. I can't remember the last time I saw a blue one, and they command even greater prices, on the basis that the drawstring was detached, and on the basis that I wasn't able to go and see the typewriter in action. I managed to negotiate the price downwards, and I actually paid €200 plus €10 for shipping. Now there is an intermittent issue with the line lock, so if you go right to the margin and the line lock engages, and you engage the carriage return, sometimes the carriage doesn't advance when you get back to the left hand margin. I think that's just to do with lack of use, and I have found it's happening less and less, so hopefully that's either resolved or on its way to being resolved. Something wrong with the escapement there, it just didn't advance there. So I've typed the word appear, but the E and the A are in the same place. I could X that out and type it again. I'm just going to leave it, not too fussy. Ugh, typed a J instead of an N. put my reading glasses on. Oh, completely messed up the word beautiful, so I'll X that out. Typed an N instead of a space there. Yeah, so definitely finding with the Valentine that I'm making more mistakes. You can also sense, I mean, if you watch the Adler video and you watch the Olympia SM4 video, you can feel, you'll certainly be able to hear it on the video, but you can feel the tactile difference. You can feel the difference. This has definitely got a lighter touch to it. Dare I say cheaper? I mean, this is an expensive typewriter, and it was when it was released. It definitely has a sort of a lighter and cheaper feel to it. You can feel it in the response of the keys that this is a machine that is largely made from plastic. It doesn't have that heaviness. It doesn't have that sort of mechanical finesse that the larger typewriters possess. However, nonetheless, it is still, I mean, if you were in the 1960s and you were someone who was writing a lot and you were mobile, sitting on a train, for instance, or if you were a freelance journalist who had to attend courts and, you know, you had to have a typewriter with you, you wouldn't carry an old Remington around the place, or a heavy Underwood, or one of those. You would definitely want something light and plastic, you know. As I said, form over function, or the function, as it were, of lightness and portability was definitely important when the Valentine came into play. I think I've just about exhausted what I'm going to write anyway, so I'm having to think long and hard about what I'm going to say next, which means it probably doesn't have much in the way of meaning. And that is, I'm going to leave it there, that is the Olivetti Valentine in red, a beautiful piece of machinery, lovingly designed and engineered and crafted. But one of many, by the way, there are a lot of Olivetti machines that have a very, very similar keyboard to the Valentine. There's a Lettera series with different numbers. That is, you look at the keys and you think that's exactly the same as an Olivetti Valentine. So it seems that they transferred the functionality of the Valentine keyboard, or maybe the Valentine was borrowed from the Lettera series. I'm not sure, because I'm not completely au fait with typewriter history. All I know is that I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 typewriters in my collection, and I never intended to collect typewriters, and yet here we are. Valentine is number 5. I also have a Brother AX230, and in the attic there's an old Silverette, which is another small portable typewriter, but that doesn't have a great, I just don't find it very nice to use. The Valentine, on the other hand, I definitely do. So that is it for now. That is the Olivetti Valentine. So again, just the things to watch out for. As I said, make sure that the carriage return lever is foldable and working and still attached. Make sure that the paper support is there and working. Make sure that the ribbon spool covers, which are a sort of a yellowy mustardy colour, are there. Make sure all your keys are working, the usual stuff. This bar, by the way, oftentimes you'll find a second-hand example in the Valentine when this bar is missing. This bar is actually important, because what it does is when the typewriter slides into the case, it sits onto rubber stops at the bottom and prevents the keys from getting damaged. And also, don't forget the black rubber stoppers on the case, which keep the Valentine in place when it's put away. Thanks for watching. Hope you've enjoyed this video. No doubt there'll be more videos about typewriters in the future. I'm Anthony Murphy, and if you haven't seen my written work, I've published 9 books in total. You can see more information about those on my website, which is www.mythicalireland.com.